Welcome to a Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside in our Florida studios, Ashley Nicole Moss, and making this triumphant return to the program, our NBA insider, Bill Reiter. And Bill, you were out yesterday for Henry, your son's fifth grade graduation. So congratulations to Henry. And also this weekend is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to you.
Hey, and Ash, I thought, did you not get the memo? Greenish, right? Your Celtics green. I thought we were gonna go green today for the Celtics.
Again,
no?
it was Bottega green, and
No.
I obviously can't wear it with you guys because you guys are fashionably illiterate. So therefore, it doesn't help me.
all the above.
The viewers did weigh in on that, and you lost.
Well, they're fashionably illiterate as well.
Also true. For me, I can speak for myself. Yes, that's
true. All right, later in the show, we're going to discuss how the Celtics built the team that could be around for a while, contending for championships, and we'll give our predictions on Game 4 tonight in Dallas. And, oh, yeah, Doc Rivers had stuff to say. Surprise, surprise. We'll get into that. But first, Celtics on the verge of their 18th championship. There's only ever been 9 sweeps in NBA history, just 2 since LeBron entered the league. Boston is 79-20. They win one more, they could finish the season a nice, clean 80-20. Winning 80% of your games is ridiculous. Ash, where do you put this Celtics team? Are we going to look back on this team and think, man, this could be like a top 5 team of all time, just the way they steamrolled through the regular season and the postseason?
Top 5 of all time might be a little bit of a stretch, right? Because you do have to take into consideration, and again, I don't want to go ahead and say this as a way of diminishing what the Celtics are as a team and what they have looked like throughout the entirety of the season and the postseason, but we would be remiss to mention the path that they had to the finals. Now, again, I don't think that if their path was more difficult, they still wouldn't be in this position. I think that they were the clear-cut best team in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA as a whole, regardless. But going through an injured Miami Heat team or a Jimmy Butler-less Miami Heat team and then a Cleveland team without Donovan Mitchell those last 2 games, no Jared Allen, who's a big part of their defense, swept the Indiana Pacers, who they were just outmatched by the Pacers were outmatched by the Celtics, and also Tyrese Halliburton.
Gave them some close games, though.
Gave them close games, but again, they were just severely outmatched. And then you also had Tyrese Halliburton, who was, in and out of that lineup as well throughout that series. So they definitely coasted their way to this position. Now, again, I'm not saying they wouldn't have been in this position regardless, but you're in a better position when you didn't have to work as hard to get to the finals in terms of your health, in terms of your body, in terms of your mentality. You're not kind of beaten up. You're not dealing with the wear and tear of the postseason and the more intensity or the increased intensity, rather, of the postseason when you've had an easier path. So it's hard for me to give that to them because there are teams that are on this list that I feel like had a little bit of a tougher journey to go ahead and hoist that trophy up. But they're definitely a fantastic team. Might be the best Celtics team we've seen in a very long time. I will say that, though.
I'll go a little stronger than Ash. I'll go a little further. I think, John, Ash, I think they set themselves up, yes, to potentially be one of the best NBA championship teams ever. I think one of the unique things about the NBA is that multiple championships, I think, are one of the key things that point to the best version of that team, or dynasties. The best year of that dynasty is usually a prerequisite for you're one of those teams. Jordan had 6 rings. He had one team that was particularly amazing. He had 6 that were amazing. Same for the Spurs. You can point to one. The 2017 Warriors, probably the best Warriors team, even though they got 4 rings and sort of different variations. And we just threw that graphic up, which is interesting, right? If they win tonight, and they're there now too, but if they win tonight, they'll have the 4th best winning percentage in the history of the NBA postseason, and sort of an obscure one that Jared Greenberg sent me. But there's only been 6 teams, and John, you sort of hit on this, that have won at least 80 games and lost 20 or fewer games over the course of the entire regular season and postseason. And those are 2 of the Bulls teams, the 2017 Warriors teams, the 83, I think, Sixers team that had Dr. J and Malone, and I think one of the Celtics teams from the 80s with Bird and company, and one of the Magic teams. So that's the rarefied air, right? In both those categories, the Celtics are flirting with. And I think, and we've hit this, I think maybe one of the reasons we don't give them the credit, and I'm still hesitant to do it unless they win more championships, at least one more, is because they don't have a designated superstar on the level of Magic or Steph or LeBron or Jordan. With all respect to Jason Tatum, they don't have a guy at that level. they're so good. They're just good in a unique way that I think it'll take multiple titles for us to maybe appreciate what is maybe a historic level of greatness when this team is a champion at some point tonight or next week.
Yeah, they were asking me, the guys over at HQ were asking me if there was a team that I could compare them to. And for exactly the reason that you just mentioned, Bill, I was saying I don't think so because they're not set up like a superstar-led team, right? I mean, they just have a bunch of players who all fit together and are all really good. But I don't know that, Jason Tatum is, a Kobe level star for the Lakers team in
2004 Pistons? Maybe.
Yeah,
that's the only one that comes to mind for me.
Maybe that's closer.
Yeah, there are
although
many.
Yeah. But what they've done is so impressive. I think that almost makes it more impressive because, we've mentioned third best net rating in NBA history during the regular season, only 2 playoff losses. And then we were talking about this last night on HQ. The fact that the Mavs, who faced 2 top 5 defenses to get here, haven't cracked 100 points yet. It's just really amazing. But I want to run this past you guys.
Well, real quick, also, I think also something you have to look at that. If you can throw that graphic up there one more time, it's interesting, right? And it's also difficult to compare these championship teams because they come from different eras of the NBA, right? You look at the 80s and the 90s, Spurs, Bulls, and Pistons, a more physical, just more dominant when it comes to the level of aggression in the sport, right? Even that 2001 Lakers team, that 1983 76ers team, it's just a different level of intensity that those guys were able to play with because it was so, prominent and also allowed in the league at that time. The 2017 and 2024 Celtics that we're talking about right now, obviously then you're now changing the way that you kind of grade those teams against the others because of that difference in era. So that's why I think it's also so difficult to kind of rate them against teams that did it against, when you were able to clothesline guys down in the paint and punch guys in the face. Going through those trenches and going through those series were like battles. They were like wars in a way that I don't think you see in the modern NBA because of, ways that they prioritize scoring more than defense and things like that. Again, not discrediting how well constructed this Boston Celtics team is because they're a phenomenally constructed team from top to bottom, offensively and defensively. But making that comparison isn't as cut and dry, just also because of the difference in eras.
It's such a great point, and it makes me think of something that hasn't occurred to me about this Celtics team. I'm going to make our producer, Aaron, who's a Warriors guy, really angry. Remember we used to have these conversations about whether any of those Warriors teams, really the 73-win team, could compete against those Bulls teams. And really it got down to just different styles. I'm with you, Ash, but I think this Celtics team could compete against those physical teams and could go up against at least some of those teams from the 80s and 90s because they're so good defensively and they're so physical. And they're so able to basically take your best player and take him out of what he does in an era where offense is huge. So I think your point is really great. I just think maybe Boston, John, is, I don't know, maybe they're even the exception to that role.
It's a different kind of defense, though. You know what I mean?
I think Drew Holiday could do it.
No,
I think Derek White could do it.
I don't know. Porzingis would be in a...
Drew Holiday do? He can do everything on the court. I mean, he's an excellent defender. Like, he can guard 1 through 5. I think he absolutely could do it.
I think Porzingis would struggle.
Well, yeah.
Porzingis might struggle.
That's not his game.
Play him a little less in this scenario.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So Bill had mentioned previously credit, and we're going to be doling some of that out. But yesterday we had a conversation about the head coach and how impactful he has been on this Boston Celtics team. And we're going to run past Bill what happened yesterday on the show between Ashley and Chris after a quick break. That's coming up on Beyond the Arc right here on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill here. You're watching us on CBS Sports Network, but you can also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave us a review. Yesterday, Bill, you missed an all-timer. We had Chris Walker in your chair, and we brought up Joe Mazzulla, who you and I had discussed the day before, and we were like, hey, you and I are kind of like in on his quirkiness. He said all kinds of crazy stuff, right? He was showing them UFC videos. He shows them now killer whale videos for a killer instinct.
Love the Predators. Amazing.
Yeah, it's just, the guy's wild. By the way, yesterday, Derek White said, I think Joe Mazzulla is a basketball genius. So whatever he says, I'm going to try to do to my highest capabilities. So this kind of sparked a little debate between Chris and Ashley, and I just sort of sat there in the middle, and here's how that unfolded.
I think there's tiers to coaches, right? And I bring this up often. There's Greg Popovich's, there's Phil Jackson's, there's those type of coaches. I wouldn't say that Joe Mazzulla is an exceptional head coach. He has an immense amount of talent at his disposal. And sometimes when you have a drastically, severely talented team like he has in the Boston Celtics, it's not so much what you do, but it's what you don't do. And that is just screw it up.
Joe Mazzulla has been very disrespected in my mind. I mean, think about it. He's the coach of the best team in the best league in the world, and people are thinking that he doesn't deserve the job, and he's one win away from winning the championship.
I could go out there and coach those guys. Let's be honest. They're that good.
That's it. He's got 2 stars. He got 2 stars.
What exactly is it that you need to go ahead and elaborately scheme up? If you put me out there, I know knowing just the fundamentals of basketball, I could get this team to win games. They are that good, that deep, that lethal both on offense and defense. And this is not a knock to Joe Mazzulla. I'm not knocking him. I think he has done a great job with this team. They were number 1 for a reason. But let's not make it seem like he's the second coming of Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich or even an Eric Spoelstra. He's not in that tier of coach, and he doesn't have to be. They're that good.
I gotta bring my mouthpiece and my gloves when I come on this show with Ashley, man.
Oh my God.
Wait, why was I putting on lip gloss? That was not on air. I know that much.
You guys don't have me fluffing my hair up, do you? When I in the break.
That wasn't
So
on
you
air.
get to break the tie here because I thought it was a spirited debate. It was close on points. I don't want to bias the judge here. You get to be the final decision.
Well, I want to pass judgment on you too, because you were like head shaking Ash, and then when Chris is making his point, you're like, yeah, you were like playing both sides. All right.
They both made really good points.
They made great points. So my actual take on this, because I was thinking about this morning, and I didn't see the show yesterday. I'm sorry, guys, because I was at the kiddos' graduation, so I didn't see it. My take was Joe Mazzulla may be this good. He may be this amazing. I just don't think we know yet. I know I'm supposed to give you an answer, and maybe Derek White is correct. I think down the years, if he wins more championships, other challenges, I'm not going to fault him for the teams that he played, because if you win 16 games in the playoffs and you win a championship, it counts. I'll say this. I thought he was just a guy along for the ride, and Brad Stevens was the real genius and architect of this thing. And I'm starting to come around to the idea that maybe Mazzulla gets a lot more credit than I initially thought, in part because if Brad Stevens can be so good at putting the team together, maybe he can recognize a guy at the back of the bench who's a head coach who's got this huge upside. And the fact that Brad Stevens is probably grooming him, teaching him, mentoring him. They had these long walks along the North End last year as they ate pasta and talked about hoops or whatever. But I don't think Mazzulla's been disrespected. So I'll go against Chris on that. You got to earn your respect in this league. And it's not just given to you because you have the best team in the Eastern Conference. You got to go out there and you have to do the things that require us to say, wow, that's an Eric Spoelstra level guy. He is not there yet, but none of those names, Ash, for me, that you mentioned are there after a single championship. He wins 2 or 3. Yeah, I think he's in that class, and I think we're going to find out because he's going to have this team for a long time, and he's going to get to test whether or not he's able to get them to these heights again.
The narrative has really shifted with him. I mean, like, we went from this guy's 35, should he be even been getting the job, to hey, are we putting him in the Eric Spoelstra conversation? I'm whispering that so Ashley doesn't yell at me too. But he's been really good. And like his guys saying that he's that good and he's like Derek White's somebody that I definitely respect. He's an incredible basketball player, very smart, and otherworldly defender. For him to say something like that, I think carries some weight.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I don't want to discredit Joe Mazzulla as a head coach, nor do I want to discredit what he's been able to do with this Boston Celtics team. Like I said yesterday, if you're number 1 and you're number 1 consistently throughout the postseason, or I'm sorry, throughout the regular season, and then you have this phenomenal run in the regular season, regardless of what you had to go through to get there, because you can only play who's in front of you, I'm not going to take that away from him. All I am simply saying is that we cannot just go ahead and put him in a tier of coach of a Popovich or a Phil Jackson or an Eric Spoelstra or even a Steve Kerr, because we don't, to Bill's point, I haven't seen, at least, and maybe you guys have, and maybe I'm the outlier here, I haven't seen something just mind-blowing, phenomenal from him from a coaching standpoint. I haven't seen a moment from him that I can say he is the next Jedi Master. Like, where has this guy been? I have seen a head coach who has a good relationship with his players. His players respect him. I see a head coach who knows he has an immense amount of talent at his disposal and does just enough to where he doesn't screw it up, but doesn't do anything elaborate where I'm sitting back and I'm thinking that, he is a basketball connoisseur, genius, superstar that we have never seen before. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that's disrespect. I think that's a fair criticism based on what we have seen, or a fair opinion, I should say, based on what we have seen. There's difference between good and then there's great. And I don't think that we have seen Joe Mazzulla as a great head coach. And to his credit, he hasn't had to be. This is a really good Boston Celtics team. You don't need to do much. You just need to not screw it up.
And as to your point, I'll be quicker, but to your point, 4 years ago, Frank Vogel won an NBA championship. That guy got fired. Mike Budenholzer won an NBA championship. That guy got fired. Monty Williams didn't win an NBA championship, but won the first 2 games in the finals. That guy got fired. So I know Chris isn't here to defend himself. They think you can win a championship, have a parade one day, and the tides can turn really fast the next. So I'm with you. Jury still out on Joe Mazzulla, but heading in a good direction.
For sure.
I think probably less danger of that here, though, just because of the way that, to Ashley's point about the roster construction, these guys, Bill, and you and I talked about it too, they're set up for the next 3-4 years to be in the pole position.
But that comes with expectation. I agree. But you better win.
It does.
It better go well.
Yeah. So I want to bring that up, though, because Brad Stevens has done such a good job. He brings in Kristaps Porzingis, who fit really well. Yeah, he missed a bunch of time. He always does, but he just obviously fits really well. And Drew Holiday, I can't say enough good things about this guy. He's exceptional. But I am interested to see what you guys think about Joel Embiid's tweet from the other night, where he
Joel Embiid. That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Joel Embiid, because it's not so much Brad Stevens going out and acquiring Drew Holiday as the Bucks screwing it up and giving Drew Holiday away. Now, obviously, the Bucks couldn't know that Portland was going to reroute Drew Holiday to the Boston Celtics. If they had, they probably wouldn't have done the move. But does Joel Embiid have a little bit of a point here? They did kind of gift the Celtics a really useful player.
Yes, he's right. Absolutely. Look, it's many things all at once, right? So there's other factors, and you're Boston. You got to go take Drew Holiday in this sort of terminology from Portland. But yes, I mean, what a terrible moment for John Horst, the GM in Milwaukee. I mean, Ash, I know we've talked about, maybe you guys hit this yesterday. I don't know. Drew Holiday hasn't turned the ball over.
No,
100
minutes, 0 turnovers, which is an insane stat line. 100 minutes, 0 turnovers.
And that would be amazing if it was Kyrie Irving, who doesn't play the level of defense, and he's trying, but doesn't have. I mean, Drew Holiday is guarding whoever he has to, and using maximum energy and being physical. So anyway, yes, Ash, for me, it's a big part of the equation is the Bucks gifting this amazing player.
It's a huge part. Now, giving them a championship is a little dramatic because there's a high probability that the Celtics would have been in this position without Drew Holiday. Now, would they have been in the position as dominantly as they have been without Drew Holiday? That's the question, especially seeing how Kristaps Porzingis has not played this entire postseason and came back for those 2 games and has gone missing again with another injury. You would severely miss Drew Holiday on defense if he wasn't there. So I agree with you, Bill. In part, the word giving them is maybe, where people are like, that's crazy. Not that crazy if you don't take it literally. I think it is a huge part of why they are in this position. And one of my favorite sayings, one thing about those tables, they always turn. I know the Bucks are looking at themselves, what the heck did we do here? Because they did not have, this is a guy who wanted to retire in Milwaukee. He put that whole thing out in the local paper, I believe, about he loves it here and how he wants to retire here. His wife loves it here. His kids love it here. And that came out, 2 days after they traded him away? I'm just saying. Karma is a real thing. That's all.
In a vacuum, I get why the Bucks did it, because they thought, okay, we need to add some more offense here. Pairing Giannis with Dame on paper makes sense. And they couldn't know that the Portland Trailblazers were going to reroute Drew Holiday to one of the Bucks' main rivals in the Eastern Conference. But they definitely stepped in it because not only do they lose out on Drew Holiday, who is an incredible player, but he goes to Boston and he forms like the best defensive backcourt in the NBA with Derek White, two guys who made second team all defense. But I was asked about this on HQ last night about who the best player on the Boston Celtics is. And I took Drew Holiday. I went off menu just because of what you guys said. He doesn't have any turnovers. He doesn't hurt you anywhere. Like, he doesn't score the ball, and his counting stats offensively aren't as eye-popping as you would expect when you say, hey, who's the best player. I'm just saying he does everything on a basketball court well. And he doesn't do anything where you're like, oh man, that sucks. He's really hurting us tonight.
I mean, from that standpoint, that's not a crazy take. I feel like, yeah, everybody focuses on, the Jays and, whoever's having the most dominant night that night in terms of scoring. But to your point, there are a lot of ways to affect the basketball game. And just like Jason Tatum was saying in his defense throughout game 1 and game 2, like, look, yeah, I'm not putting up this elaborate amount of points, but look at what I'm doing on the back end and look at what else I'm doing on the court. Drew Holiday does that consistently night in, night out. And again, I go back to the lack of turnovers. To be able to be on the court and be able to be utilized in the way he is utilized night in and night out and not cost your team a turnover is such a mind-blowing stat to me, especially when you have gone against teams like the Indiana Pacers who play at an extremely fast pace. To be able to maintain that level of speed and just tenacity in your defensive efforts and not turn the ball over, to me, is such a mind-blowing stat. And I keep teetering back and forth between Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday as finals MVP. For me, Jason Tatum had a phenomenal game 3, but for me, it is still between Holiday and Brown to win that award with the way that they've been playing.
We still have another game tonight. I think right now it's probably Jaylen after game 3, but who knows? Maybe Drew has a monster tonight. We'll see. There is going to be another game, though, and the Dallas Mavericks ostensibly are going to play in it. So on the other side, we're going to discuss what they need to do tonight to avoid a sweep. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to a prior to Game 4 edition, Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley,
I didn't know where you're going.
Yeah, me neither. I was confused.
The Mavs have to figure out a way to avoid a sweep. Otherwise, their season is over. And so I guess I've been thinking a lot about this, about what has to happen. And the problem is that in Game 3, they did a lot of the things that I thought needed to happen. Kyrie had a big game. They dominated the points in the paint without Kristaps Porzingis. They ran at the Celtics on the three-point line, although the Celtics still got up 46 three-pointers. But they did a lot of the things that I thought. And they still lost. So what has to happen tonight for the Mavs to end up avoiding a sweep and ending their season?
I think Luka has to tackle an official. I think just commit. Just full-on form tackle. The lead. I mean, yeah, John, play somebody else. I mean, the problem becomes, you're absolutely right. And we'll see what the situation is with Porzingis, but they took advantage of that rim protector for Boston being out. And they had this amazing first half from Kyrie, which in theory should take some of the pressure and load off of Luka, at least early in the game. And we know the story. Boston still mounted that comeback. They still played really good basketball. They still got off a bunch of threes. And Luka got himself into foul trouble and was, jawing at the officials and gets himself fouled out. So Ash, I don't have a good answer. I think you've just gotta go back to the things that you did in Game 3. You try to keep hoping you can get help from your role players because it's a home game. But we've sort of flipped here from Kyrie's got to be a leader and a star to we got that. But Luka, we took for granted that if Kyrie showed up, you do all the right things too, and he did a lot of the wrong things from a maturity level he can't do. So I think it's what we saw in Game 3. Maybe some more help from some of the role players, but it was a pretty good performance. And Luka has to stop worrying about the officials, have more maturity, have more leadership, play better, and stay on the floor.
I mean, it's asking for him to do a complete rewire of his personality in 12 hours, if that. It's just, here's the thing, there's losing and then there's losing, right? And what I mean by that is you sometimes in series, you'll see a team lose, but they're in it. Every single quarter, every single possession, there's signs of life there. It's just that it comes down to that last call, or that last possession or last few possessions, and they just lose it, but they're constantly in the game. I haven't seen that from the Dallas Mavericks in the first 2 games. I saw that in spurts in Game 3, but then again, the situation with Luka put them in a hole they could not get themselves out of. It's disheartening when you look at this Dallas Mavericks team because it's a night and day difference between the team that we saw go against the Timberwolves that had such tenacity, such fire, such continuity as a unit on that floor. They don't look like that. They look like the team that they were right after the trade deadline when they're starting to figure it out, but they still kind of revert back to old ways. It's frustrating and it's disheartening, and it's not, if you're someone who picked the Dallas Mavericks like I did, there's not really much sign of life with this team, right? You don't see any of that fire in them that you should see in a team that's down 0-2 or now down 0-3. And for me, it's not a question of the talent. Kyrie Irving is talented. Luka is talented. There's a lot of talent on the floor. It just doesn't look like, to me, they have been able to harness that talent in the way that they have in previous series. So for me, going into it, it's like it's not what they need to do, it's what they need to not do, and that is be everything that they have been, at least in this particular series.
I can't believe they haven't scored 100. It's just mind-blowing to me, and I just wonder where they're going to get offense from. They dusted off Tim Hardaway Jr. the other night, and he didn't look great. Maxi Kleber doesn't look good, but they have a problem here, and we talked about it a lot, but it remains true. The Celtics are jacking up all these threes, and the Mavs only took 25 in the last one. I mean, it's not going to work. They got to figure out a way to get more offense somewhere. Ashley mentioned
Tim Hardaway hasn't hit a shot since May, John. It's like May 13th or something like that. It's crazy.
That's an act of desperation.
It is.
It's a
it
sad
absolutely
act.
is. You can see Jason Kidd just like pulling all the levers that he could possibly pull, and none of them are working. Like all the levers, and none of them are working. Ashley mentioned that it would require Luka to change his mindset. He's on sort of like an apology tour since freaking out in Game 3. He gave a long interview saying that he's got to be better and he can't foul out and he's got to not concentrate on the refs and all that stuff.
He said, my bad.
That was so authentic, too. I was like, I got emotional. It was like being at Henry's 5th grade graduation. The same level of emotion in his Luka. Can I just thank you for bringing that up? Give me a break, man. Also, he's my buddy, but Brian Windhurst, amazing, but just goes at him, knows the timing. And then Luka goes and does his fake apology on the same network. It's like they're just creating their own content. What a phony apology that was. Come on.
It is.
Give me a break.
It's good content for both of them. Brad Botkin also ethered him on CBSSports.com. You should go read that column. So Luka was taking a lot of incoming. I wanted to ask you guys this. If they get swept, how does that reflect on Luka and the season? And actually the Mavs season too. I mean, because we were all trumpeting him. He was an MVP candidate. They were playing with house money, and then they run into this Boston Celtics buzzsaw, and I don't think it's going to reflect real great on Luka. It's going to be a long offseason for him.
I mean, Bill, I'll let you go ahead and do this as the insider.
After you. You go first.
I'm just going to say this, and Bill's the insider. He's been having these conversations about Luka far longer than I have. So I'll just say this. People are going to remember not the incredible season that Luka had. This is a what have you done for me lately league, right?
You're right.
People have short-term memories a lot of the time when it comes to the NBA. They remember the last great thing that you did, but they also remember the last bad thing that you did. And people are going to remember that, Luka offensively put up a lot of points. You know that when you get Luka on the court, you know what he does. They're going to remember a lot of dribbling, not a lot of passing. And they're also going to remember somebody who, in the big moment, presented himself as a little immature when it came to not only how he dealt with the referees, but his commitment to defense in all 4 quarters, his commitment to defense when it came to, helping his teammates out with getting back into transition. He's too busy arguing with the referees. And we talk about this constantly when we talk about Luka in the regular season. You would hope that some of those bad habits fall to the wayside when you are in a moment where you can possibly compete for a championship, and this is where they are right now, although down 0-3, it didn't start that way. People are going to remember that Luka, for all the great things about him, he still has a lot of maturing to do when it comes to getting to that next tier of superstar and a superstar who can win a championship.
So I wrote a column entering the playoffs, channeling many people in the NBA in front offices who thought Luka's approach and style play would eventually not work. And they're all chirping now on my cell phone, right? And thank you to them for giving me info and giving me something to write about it. I know we talked about it on the show. Their view is this is who Luka is, right? This is who he is, and he's been exposed in varying degrees. and they're my sources, so if you're watching, thank you. But let me gently push back on the possibility that could change. And I'll go back to my own career. I covered LeBron his first year in Miami. I was a beat columnist. I was not very, I wasn't wrong, but I wasn't particularly nice to him again and again and again and again every day. And LeBron, he didn't love it. And when he failed in those finals, I wrote some pretty aggressive stuff. And maybe a year or two later, he agreed to do a sit-down TV interview with me, which was the first one I'd ever done. I was super nervous. And we're just, sitting there, how this goes. You're getting mic'd up, so you're talking. And I asked him why he agreed to do it. And his answer was, once I stopped caring about critics, I stopped caring, Bill, about what you did or didn't say. And I just thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation. And in that interview, I asked him whether I was right about it in my criticisms. And his answer was, not really. Basically, his answer was a nice version of, sort of not really, it doesn't matter. But he said, I did fail in the finals, LeBron in 2011. I did do some of the things that people said. And that failure, LeBron James said, that heartache and that darkness is what led me to this summer of awfulness and contemplation and change. And everybody needs, I think failure is a huge part of success. Often failure is just a huge part of more failure for people. But the really big success stories out there often struggle, right? Steph Curry was overlooked. Go down the list. So I think the real question will be, is this a wake-up call for Luka Doncic to Luka Doncic? He's not going to be reached by Jason Kidd or one of his buddies back home or an agent or a fellow player or anybody on this show or any other show. He's going to be reached, if he's reachable, by the heartache and the blame and the actual fault that lies with him. And I think we'll see in the future whether or not he can change or whether or not he can.
That requires like a certain amount of introspection. And I think that there are some people who can do that. As you mentioned, LeBron is one of those guys. I have my doubts about whether or not Luka will be. I know that he's been doing that, pretty insincere apology tour the last couple of days, but we'll see if it actually sticks. But I have my doubts. Another guy who I think doesn't often do introspection is a guy we're going to talk about after the break. That's Doc Rivers. He's had some interesting things to say over these last couple of days. You guys love talking about Doc Rivers. We're going to get into it on Beyond the Arc right here on CBS. They're already shaking their heads. It's CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill here. Check out our YouTube page. You can find that at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. I have a feeling this next segment might end up on the YouTube page. Doc Rivers, always a favorite on this show. He went on with Bill Simmons the other day, and I'm going to read you a quote from what he said, and then I'll let you two take it away. He said, quote, usually you play better at home. The only place that I thought it was more difficult to play at home was in Philly because of the crowd. I thought it affected our players some. By the way, the Sixers were 31-4 at home the year before Doc got there. This is just one of the things that Doc said the other day. We'll get into the other one next. What do we think about Doc blaming, I guess, things not working out in Philly on the Philly crowd?
Bill, you go first.
This dude's he's never met a person or a thing that he can't blame for his own problems and mistakes. It is an art form. Like this guy is just constantly writing skits for SNL that they can just stack about him whenever there's nothing going on a Saturday night. Are you kidding? Ash, I'm almost speechless by this guy. The ability John just gave us a stat. We couldn't play well at home because of the crowd, except the year before the crowd was one of the best in the NBA. No, the problem was that you're not a very good coach, Doc, and that you're vastly overrated. All right, I'm done. Yes, you take it away. This guy makes me so mad I can't even talk.
Yeah, look, if I'm a Milwaukee Buck, I'm annoyed by this because we have been out of the postseason for a month and a half at this point, if not 2 months. I'm estimating here. Why are you bringing this up? Why are you adding insult to injury? Nobody has talked about us for weeks now, and here you are justifying the reason why we underperformed. And when we were overperforming after, firing Adrian Griffin, everyone was saying it was a great move, and Doc's turning this team around, and Giannis and Dame, and
not everybody.
Well, there were a lot of people who were saying this was the right move, and then you were relishing in that glory, right? That was great. That was fantastic. It was all good and dandy there. And the first sign of adversity, when things kind of, end up happening the way a lot of people anticipated them happening for a multitude of different reasons, all of a sudden it's everybody's fault but your own. It's the Philly crowd. John, if you remember, it was the towel boy or the ball boy or the water boy or whoever it was that was on the road. It was Damian Lillard not coming into camp in shape, even though he wasn't the head coach. It's this person's fault. It's annoying. Doc, just say, look, we didn't get it done this year. Maybe I'm part to blame. Not maybe, I am part to blame. There was a lot of turnover in the middle of the season. Giannis wasn't healthy. It doesn't help when your superstar is not healthy. Damian Lillard was dealing with some injury. We didn't get it done this year, but next year we're coming in ready to go. We'll have a full unit. We'll have chemistry. We'll have camaraderie. We'll have familiarity. We'll be back next year. Don't worry about us. But no, Doc's got to go ahead and dip his hand into his bag of excuses. It's annoying. It's annoying.
I'll say that, we're in the middle of the finals here. Well, maybe the end of the finals, but we're still in the finals. And the only things that we've talked about other than the finals are the Lakers head coaching search and now Doc Rivers. So kudos to Doc for providing content to us constantly. I actually appreciate that, and I would like to thank him for that. You mentioned, Ashley, his comments about Dame. Also on the Bill Simmons podcast the other day, he revealed, Doc did, that Dame evidently came into training camp out of shape. He said that Dame didn't work out all summer last year because he knew he was going to get traded and didn't want to get hurt. And he said that he told Doc, this is, quote, the worst shape I've ever been in my life. And that raised flags for the two of you for a couple of different reasons, not the least of which was that Doc wasn't the head coach at the time that all that went down. And also he kind of just threw Dame under the bus a little bit.
He did. I mean, yeah, okay. So a lot, right? But here's the thing, and I can't recall where he's had this conversation, how many times, but I do believe, if memory serves me correctly, Dame has alluded to this in an interview, maybe 2 interviews, if it was a podcast, I'm not sure. He did speak about, coming in out of shape because of everything that was going on with Portland and maybe Miami, maybe not Miami, but I can't recall him ever going into detail like this. This to me, and again, this was months ago when Dame spoke about this, if my memory serves me correctly, right? So here's my thing. Again, the Milwaukee Bucks underperformed. Dame didn't go ahead and perform the way that he wanted to. Giannis couldn't perform the way he wanted to. This just adds insult to injury. And also, Doc, like you said, was not the head coach. One, why would you be aware of whether or not Damian Lillard was traded? It's not your problem. It's not your concern. Two, because you weren't his head coach, that means you guys went to dinner in a friendly capacity, which means you just snitched on this man. You violated the circle of trust as a friend unnecessarily.
But isn't it that big a deal that he said Dame was out of shape?
Because he's not doing it, John, in a let's defend Damian Lillard way. He's doing it it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, Dame was out of shape. Like, why are you
moping all summer?
And what makes it worse is, like, you weren't even his coach. If you were his coach and he said that to you, then maybe you can understand why he would share that, because that just goes ahead and talks about what he was dealing with as a head coach going into training camp, going into the start of the season. He wasn't. Therefore, it was a friendly dinner. Why are you bringing this up? It has no bearing on anything. It wasn't even your responsibility at training camp. It was Adrian Griffin's. I'm so confused. I'm very confused.
Bill, let me play devil's advocate real quick. Let me play devil's advocate real quick. I want to ask you a question. In the media, we talk all the time about how we want people to talk to us, to be transparent, to give us good answers, not cliches, not to keep all their secrets. Isn't Doc kind of doing what we've always asked from head coaches and players and executives to kind of tell us what's going on?
That's my wife, Lori, who I love very much, to feel like she can tell me anything. I don't need it at 3 a.m. when I'm sleeping and have to get up at 4:30 to do a radio show. There's a time and a place for everything. As you noted, we're in the NBA Finals. It's June. As Ash noted, the Milwaukee Bucks are not actually playing basketball right now. And also, this is self-serving. He's trying to win over Bill Simmons, who's been a big-time critic. So he's selling out Dame and whoever else he can to win over Bill Simmons, who's been critical of Doc forever. This is transactional for Doc Rivers. So look, like what you said makes sense, I guess, in theory.
And Bill,
but again, Lori, I love you.
You've been reporting on the NBA for a very long time. This man, Damian Lillard, wanted to go to Miami so bad. And we're talking about the Miami Heat, who have the toughest conditioning program in the NBA. You want me to
that's a great
believe
point.
this man wanted to be traded
either.
to a Pat Riley team and was not working out? I am not buying it. I'm not buying it.
That's such a good point. Like, I don't think Doc Rivers is telling the truth. Also, small point, but I'm going to make it for Adrian Griffin. And I'm with Ash, I don't believe it. If Damian Lillard was in terrible shape, the worst shape of his career, that should offer a little more grace to the guy that was the coach and who had to try to make it work. Remember, part of the criticism, some of it was defense, but part of the criticism was Damian and Giannis aren't really working out together the way that we want. Well, maybe that's because Doc is pouring poison in Dame's ear at the dinner he's using to later snitch on him in the NBA Finals, or because the guy's out of shape. Give me a break. By the way, has anyone had a worse year than John Horst? Sorry. Has anyone had a worse year than John Horst, the GM? He moves on from Drew Holiday, and I like John a lot, but he moves on from Drew Holiday. Thank you, Bucks, for the championship, say the Boston Celtics. He hires the wrong coach. Like, if you get rid of a guy in the middle of the season, that's the wrong guy. And then he hires the only person on earth who's guaranteed to be worse than that person that they had to fire midseason in Doc Rivers. That front office is really messed up.
Tough run for John Horst. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when Dame and Doc are reunited, because the way that you guys were just describing it, either he snitched on Dame or he lied about Dame, but either way, it's not great for Doc. So that'll be fun to see next offseason, or this offseason. All right, we're going to take another break, and then Game 4 tonight. It's prediction time on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc, wrapping up a Friday edition of the show. Game 4 tonight in Dallas. Mavs are -1 in this game. We might be looking at the 10th sweep in NBA Finals history. Bill, I'm going to start with you because you have sort of conflicting interests here on your prediction. Right. You had Mavs in 5, but if the Mavs win and they avoid the sweep, then you got to get on a plane and the series continues. So which way are you going?
Oh, I want Boston. I mean, the Mavs in 5. John, I don't even know this. Mathematically, I'm eliminated. I don't think I can get there. So
it's not looking good.
Look, it's either one. Like, Boston's cool, right? Like, I like Boston. It'd be fine to go to Boston. But I think Boston's going to win. I'm going to take Boston, which means that they're not going to win, because the sports writer logic is always whatever a sports media member needs to have happen, the opposite happens. And I'll throw in the fact Boston's got to fly back to Boston anyway. Whatever happens, you got to think Dallas is playing for pride. That's usually a thing in these gentlemen sweeps. And Luka's been, I think, properly embarrassed nationally by Brian Winters and everyone else that has followed suit, I think, correctly. And you would imagine that probably Dallas is at some point going to play a good game of basketball and or score more than 100 points. So I'm probably wrong, but I'll take the Celtics, Ash, to keep me here on Father's Day.
I'm going to go ahead and go with the Mavericks for this reason. Closeout games are hard. To Bill's point, the Mavs, there's no pressure on them. If you get swept, you get swept. People are expecting them to get swept. Boston has all the pressure to close out the series, rather. I'm sorry. Also, sometimes teams want to win on their home court versus being on a visitor's court. Not saying that that's in the mentality, but sometimes it's in the back of your mind. I'm going to go with the Mavericks winning to avoid the sweep, but it's over in 5 once they get back to Boston.
I mean, I think that would be best case scenario for the Mavs, but I think they're checked out. The Celtics they've thrown everything that they could possibly throw at the Boston Celtics, and I just don't think they have an answer for them. I think it's going to be a sweep. It's going to be the 10th in NBA Finals history. Here's a quick question for you, and we have to go fast. If it is a sweep, is this from a consumer standpoint,
terrible,
from a viewer standpoint,
terrible,
does that make this one of the worst?
Not great.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Not great.
Technically, let the record show I'm still alive at Mavs in 7. Just want to put that out there.
Math, you're into it.
I don't like your odds on that one either. All right, that's going to do it for us in today's show. We're going to be back at it on Monday, but for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, who will join me on HQ tonight, for Ashley Nicole Moss in our Florida studios, I'm John Gonzalez. I want to say thank you for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy Game 4. Happy Father's Day to all you dads out there, and Bill Ryder, of course, and have a great weekend.